The fertile land of Orissa on the eastern coast of India has been a great center of culture since ancient times. Here is a continuing Buddhist tradition of over 2,000 years. There are edicts of Emperor Ashoka of the 3rd century BC at Dhauli, near Bhubaneswar, and at Jaugarh. In keeping with ancient concepts of dharma, or rules of conduct, the benign emperor speaks of the people of his land as his children. His message to administrators is to be kind to the people. Everywhere in India, the 2nd century BC saw the making of stupas and rock-cut prayer halls and monasteries for the Buddhist and Jaina faith. Here in Orissa, great caves were hewn out of the rock for the Jaina faith at Khandgiri on the outskirts of Bhubaneswar. The artistic motifs and Chaitya arches are the same as seen in Buddhist, Jaina and Ajivaka monuments of the BC period in central and western India. For hundreds of years that followed, as everywhere in India, the preoccupation of the people was with the philosophic quest. No palaces and houses for ephemeral beings were made of lasting materials. Therefore, none survive. Only that which was made in service of the eternal and the search for the truth was built out of lasting materials. Orissa was a great center of the Buddhist faith. Images of the Buddha and Bodhisattvas have been found in large numbers across the entire land. The numbers are overwhelming and speak of great devotion and artistic pursuit. Xuanzang, the Chinese pilgrim of the 7th century, speaks of many vast monasteries on the hilltops of this region. The Tibetan historian Taranatha of the 17th century speaks of Orissa as a vital center of the development of the Buddhist faith. Archaeological excavations over the past 50 years have unearthed vast monastic complexes in the Asiya hill range. As the search for the truth was most important in the early period, it is not palaces and forts which were made on the top of hills. It is the monuments dedicated to the search for enlightenment which are found on practically every hilltop. The site of Lalitgiri has the remains of vast viharas which must have once hummed with activity. High atop the hill is the vast stupa, which reminds us of the ephemeral nature of all that is around us. In early Buddhism, the emphasis was on self-discipline. The pain of life in the world was because of our desires. We were to find the path for losing our desires. Thereby we could be liberated from the shackles of mortal existence and pain. The forms of the world around were considered to be an illusion, perceived through our limited and subjective sensibilities. Therefore, the focus of meditation was the stupa, the simplest of forms, which did not distract us from our aims. By the 5th century, sublime human forms were created in art to provide another way towards the attainment of the final peace. In Indic thought, it is believed that the moment of our response to beauty in any form is very valuable. It is in that moment that the veils of illusion are parted, and we see the grace which underlies all of creation. Therefore, art was created to bring before us that beauty, to lift us out of the weariness of life in the mundane world, to take us away from the noise and clamor of the material world to the sanctuary of peace and joy which is within us. In the great monasteries of eastern India, such as these, the search for enlightenment became a great intellectual endeavor. The various qualities of the Buddhahood within us were analyzed in great detail. A logical path towards the attainment of the truth was created. The many attributes of Buddhahood were personified in a pantheon of deities. They helped to focus our attention on those qualities which needed to be awakened within us. We meditated upon a deity till those qualities grew within us and filled us completely. We had become that deity. Then we had to move further on the path, towards the illumined center where the final peace lay. This organized system of the logical pursuit of the goal of enlightenment came to be known as Vajrayana, the vehicle of the thunderbolt. Its logic was held to be as striking as a thunderbolt and as indestructible as a diamond. The remains of the great monasteries of Orissa present us the largest numbers of Vajrayana deities found anywhere. As elsewhere, we also know that the early Theravada and Mahayana schools of thought were also followed in these monasteries. Logical discussions of the truth and of the effectiveness of various paths towards enlightenment were common in Indic faiths since the ancient period. The site of Ratnagiri is on a hillock in the Assia Hills, about 50 kilometers from the city of Cuttack. Taranatha, the Tibetan historian, writes that here was a great monastic complex from the 5th century onwards. This was a great center of learning for all the schools of Buddhist thought. He says that here were kept 3 sets of both the Mahayana and Theravada texts, which were studied by several hundreds of monks. The complex flourished till the 12th century AD and continued in a decadent state till the 16th century. The main vihara here was built in the 7th or 8th century. Beyond its entrance complex, the vihara is over 180 feet by 180 feet, and it must have been very impressive. Indeed, as the devotees would have passed through the doorways of stone, they would have entered a great sanctuary of the spirit. As everywhere in India since ancient times, the entrance to the sacred space presents us the images of the exuberant world of nature, which we leave behind as we enter. We see here the flowering abundance of the world of forms and its frolicsome vitality. It is seen here as a manifestation of the formless truth we seek as we proceed inside to meditate upon the Buddhahood within us. As in all ancient Indic monuments, Lakshmi, who represents the creative abundance of the manifest world, greets us here. The continuous vine of the overflowing fertility of the natural world is a central theme from the 2nd century BC stupa railings of Bharhut and Sanchi. It is seen later in the railings of the Amravati stupa and others, and also in temple doorways from the 5th century onwards. Doorways in the Brahmanical temples of Orissa are very similar to these Buddhist vihara entrances. The interconnectedness of all forms of life is eloquently expressed here. In this vision, the animals and birds, the trees and flowers are seen as no different from human beings. They have the same desire to play their role in the interconnected world. Each has the longing to gain the joy of the knowledge of the truth. The numerous sculptures found here show that along with the Vikramshila University of Bihar, Ratnagiri was a prime center for the development of Vajrayana Buddhism. There is in these sculptures the detailed and logical personification of the qualities to be awakened within us. The remains show that the stupa and viharas here were rebuilt over the centuries. The number of portable monolithic stupas found here are exceeded only by those found in the complex of the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya. Though comparatively forgotten in recent times, Ratnagiri was obviously one of the greatest centers of the Buddhist world. The hilltop of nearby Udaigiri also had a monastic complex with stupas and viharas. The exuberance of fertile nature in Orissa is reflected in the richness of the carvings here. Amid all the activity of the world, our attention is directed to the peace which can be awakened within us. Recent excavations in the Asiya Hill Range have unearthed the remains of many stupas and rock-cut images at Langudi Hill. Buddhist worship continued for at least 1500 years at the site. An inscription of Emperor Ashoka of the 3rd century BC has been found on a stupa here. The northern face of the hill has 34 rock-cut stupas of the 2nd or 3rd centuries AD. The rock-cutting tradition is seen continued in early medieval times on the southern face of the hill. Here we see figures in a large relief panel. Dhyani Buddhas, a Tara and a Pragya Paramita, deities of the later Mahayana school of Buddhism, are made here. There is considerable evidence that further excavations will yield many early Buddhist remains here. At the base of Kaima Hill, a little to the north of Langudi Hill, a rock-cut elephant has been found datable to the 3rd century BC. The spread of Buddhism and its fulsome practice all over Orissa is seen in the richness of Buddhist remains in Kiching in remote northern Orissa. There were a number of temples and stupas here. Sculptures of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and Brahmanical deities show the happy coexistence of both faiths in this region till beyond the 10th century. At Kuruma, 8 kilometers from Konarak, we find remains of an early Buddhist complex. A Buddha image continues to be worshipped by the villagers here by the name of Dharma. It is in the villages of Naupatna and Maniabandha that we see the fulsome continuance of Buddhist traditions till today. The weavers of this region are famous for their tie and dye fabrics. Their silk saris are admired throughout India. It is these weavers who have continued the worship of the Buddha. As in ancient times, the adoration is carried out with songs of devotion. The purpose is to lose our fretful concerns in the ecstasy of our search for the truth. The Buddhist sites of Orissa are many. Sculptures and stupas are found atop prominent hills everywhere, displaying a flourishing culture of devotion. Whilst living life in the material, everyday world, the attention of the people was upon the truth, which is beyond all our pains.
Buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami, buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami.